The woman's voice cracked like dried leather when she spoke. "Please, don't lift the blanket." Her eyes, wide with terror that had long since burned past tears, never left Samuel Hartwell's weathered hands as they hovered over the bundle in her arms. The storm had driven her to his door, a stranger in a torn blue dress, mud-caked and shivering, clutching something wrapped in what looked like his own missing horse blanket, the one that had vanished from his barn 3 nights ago. Samuel had been reaching for his rifle when she collapsed on his porch, that desperate plea spilling from her lips like a prayer to a deaf god. Now, in the amber glow of his kitchen lantern, he could see she was younger than the lines around her eyes suggested. Maybe 25, maybe younger. Hard living had a way of stealing years from a face. Her dark hair hung in tangles, and there was blood under her fingernails, not fresh, but not old enough to forget. "Ma'am," Samuel said, his voice steady despite the unease crawling up his spine. "I can't help you if I don't know what. You can't help me anyway." She pulled the bundle closer, and something inside shifted. Not the movement of fabric settling, but something else. Something that made Samuel's throat tighten. "Nobody can help me now, but maybe you can help them find me when this is over." The wind howled against his cabin walls, rattling the windows like skeleton fingers. Samuel had lived alone on this patch of Colorado territory for 8 years, and he'd learned to read trouble in a person's eyes. This woman carried the kind of trouble that left bodies in its wake. "What's your name?" he asked, not moving toward her but not backing away either. "Sarah." She looked down at the bundle, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "Sarah Crenshaw. And this is why they're coming for me." Outside, lightning split the sky, and in that brief, violent flash, Samuel saw riders on the distant ridge, 3 of them, maybe 4, sitting motionless in the rain like death waiting for an invitation. Sarah saw them too. Her knuckles went white around the blanket. "They followed me here," she breathed. "God forgive me, I've brought this to your door." Samuel's first instinct was to tell her to leave, take whatever cursed thing she carried and disappear into the storm before those riders decided to come calling. He'd built his life on these 40 acres precisely to avoid other people's troubles, and he'd be damned if he'd throw that away for a stranger. But something in Sarah's eyes stopped him. Not just fear, he'd seen plenty of that. This was the look of someone who'd already died inside, and was just waiting for her body to catch up. "What's under the blanket, Sarah?" "Something that should have stayed buried." Her voice was barely audible over the rain. "Something I should have left alone." Samuel moved to the window, keeping his body between Sarah and the glass. The riders were gone, but he could feel them out there, circling like vultures, waiting. "You want to tell me what happened, or do I have to guess?" Sarah's laugh was bitter as winter wind. 3 days ago I was just a widow trying to make it through another month. Had a little claim up near Deadwood Creek, panning enough gold to keep food on the table. Barely. She shifted the bundle, and again that unnatural movement from within. "Then I found their camp." "Whose camp?" "The Garrett brothers. You know the name." Samuel's blood went cold. Everyone in 3 counties knew the name Garrett. Bank robbers, claim jumpers, killers. The territorial marshal had been hunting them for 2 years with no luck. "Found them shot up and dying by their fire," Sarah continued. 3 of them. Looked like they'd been fighting over something. Maybe this. She glanced down at the bundle. "The youngest one, Danny, he was still breathing when I got there. Begged me to take it. Said his brothers would kill him for it anyway, and at least this way, someone good might." Her words dissolved into a shudder. "Might what, Sarah?" "Might give it a proper burial." Thunder crashed overhead, and through the sound, Samuel heard something else. Hoofbeats, slow and deliberate, growing closer. His hand found the rifle leaning against the wall. "How many of them are left alive?" he asked. 2. Maybe more by now. Word travels fast when there's gold involved. Sarah's eyes met his. "They think I killed their brothers for this. They think I know where the rest of their treasure is buried." The hoofbeats stopped just outside his gate. "Hartwell." The voice cut through the storm like a blade. "We know she's in there." Samuel peered through the rain-streaked window. 2 men sat their horses by his fence, slickers gleaming black in the lightning. The taller one had a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. Marcus Garrett, if the wanted posters were accurate. The other was built like a bear with a shotgun across his saddle. "We don't want trouble with you, Hartwell," Marcus called out. "Just send out the woman and what she stole, and we'll be on our way." Sarah was shaking now, clutching the bundle so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "They'll kill us both," she whispered. "Soon as they get this back, they'll put bullets in our heads and burn your cabin to cover the tracks." Samuel's mind raced. He could give them Sarah and save himself. It would be the smart thing, the survival thing. He didn't owe this woman anything, and he'd worked too hard building this life to throw it away for a stranger's bad choices. But then he looked at her, really looked at her, past the fear and the desperation to something else, dignity. Even with death riding up to his door, Sarah Crenshaw held herself like someone who'd made peace with doing the right thing. "Consequences be damned. What's really under that blanket, Sarah?" he asked, quietly. Her eyes filled with tears for the first time since she'd arrived. "Promise me something first. Promise me you won't think less of me when you see." "I promise." With trembling hands, Sarah pulled back a corner of the blanket. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't gold, it wasn't treasure, it was a baby, maybe 6 months old, with dark hair and Sarah's same wide eyes. The child was sleeping, somehow peaceful despite the chaos swirling around them. "Danny Garrett had a woman in town," Sarah whispered. "Mexican girl named Maria. She died in childbirth, and Danny, he couldn't bear to look at the boy, said he reminded him too much of what he'd lost. So he left him with his brothers, and they were going to." She couldn't finish, but Samuel understood. He'd heard stories about the Garrett brothers. They weren't the kind of men who'd raise an orphaned child. "Hartwell." Marcus's voice was losing patience. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Samuel looked from Sarah to the sleeping child, then back to the window where death waited in the rain. His choice was made. "His name is Daniel," Sarah whispered, adjusting the blanket around the sleeping baby. "After his father, but better than his father, I hope. I've been calling him Danny." Samuel found himself staring at the child's tiny fingers, curled into perfect fists. "Why didn't you just tell me from the start?" "Because I knew what you'd think. Woman shows up in the night with someone else's baby, killers on her trail. Sounds like trouble you'd be smart to avoid." Sarah's voice was steady now, resigned. "And you'd be right." Outside, Samuel could hear the Garrett brothers talking in low voices, planning. He moved away from the window and knelt beside Sarah's chair. "Tell me about Maria. I barely knew her. She worked at the hotel in town, saved every penny to bring her mother up from Mexico. Sweet girl, always had a smile." Sarah looked down at little Danny, and her expression softened. "When she died, the whole town mourned. But Danny Garrett, he just disappeared. Left his son with those animals, and rode off to forget. And when you found the camp, young Danny was barely breathing, but he kept asking about the boy. Said he'd made a mistake, said he wanted to make it right. The fever was taking him, but he was clear about one thing. He wanted his son to have a chance at a decent life." Sarah's finger traced the baby's cheek. "I couldn't leave him there to die with the rest of them." Samuel heard his own words before he'd planned to speak them. "There's a family in Denver, the Weatherbys, lost their own boy to fever last winter. Good people, God-fearing folk. I think they'd love him like their own." For the first time since she'd arrived, Sarah smiled. It transformed her face, showing him the woman she'd been before trouble found her. "Hartwell." Marcus Garrett's voice was sharp with anger now. "I'm counting to 10, then we're coming in." Samuel stood, checking his rifle. "Sarah, there's a root cellar behind the kitchen. Door's hidden under that rug there. You take Danny and get down there. Stay quiet no matter what you hear." "What about you?" "I'm going to buy you time to get away. There's a trail leads north through the rocks, comes out near the old mining road. You can make Denver in 2 days if you push hard." Sarah grabbed his arm. "They'll kill you, maybe, but that boy deserves a chance." Samuel met her eyes. "And maybe so do you." She kissed his forehead, quick and grateful, then hurried toward the hidden cellar door with Danny clutched against her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel heard the root cellar door close just as Marcus Garrett's voice reached 10. Section 5, Full Resolution plus Epilogue. The front door exploded inward with the second kick. Marcus Garrett stepped through the splintered frame, water streaming from his hat, pistol drawn. His companion, a massive man with dead eyes, followed with the shotgun ready. "Where is she?" Marcus's scarred face twisted with rage. Samuel stood by his fireplace, rifle in hand but pointed at the floor. "Gone. Rode out the back way about 10 minutes ago." "You're lying. Check for yourself." The big man moved through the cabin like a predator, overturning furniture, checking corners. Samuel held his breath when the man's boots stopped near the kitchen rug, but the hidden cellar door held its secret. "She ain't here, Marcus," the big man rumbled. Marcus kept his gun trained on Samuel. "What did she tell you?" "Said you boys were chasing her over some gold. Said she found your brothers dead, and took what she could find." "That's not all she took." Marcus's finger found the trigger. "She killed them, Hartwell. Shot my brothers down like dogs for 30,000 in gold coins." Samuel had been in enough fights to read a man's intentions in his eyes. Marcus Garrett was going to kill him regardless of what he said. The only question was whether he'd live long enough for Sarah and the baby to get clear. "Well," Samuel said, straightening to his full height, "if she's got 30,000 in gold, I expect she's halfway to California by now." Marcus smiled without warmth. "Maybe, but you helped her, and that makes you just as guilty." The gunshot was deafening in the closed space. Samuel felt the bullet tear through his shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the floor hard, his rifle clattering away. "That's for lying to me," Marcus said. "Now where did she really go?" Samuel pressed his hand to the bleeding wound and smiled through the pain. "Go to hell." The second shot never came. Instead, Samuel heard horses outside, lots of them, and voices shouting orders. Marcus and his partner exchanged glances, then rushed to the broken door. "Territorial Marshal," the voice boomed across the rain. "You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Marcus cursed and fired a shot through the window. The answering volley from outside turned the remaining glass into powder. In the chaos, Samuel heard the big man scream and fall. When the shooting stopped, Marcus Garrett lay dead by the door, and Marshal Tom Bradley was kneeling beside Samuel, pressing a bandana against his wound. "Saw the smoke from your chimney and figured you might have unexpected guests," Bradley said. "Been tracking these boys for 3 days." "The woman," Samuel started. "What woman?" Bradley's eyes were knowing. "We didn't see any woman." 2 years later, Samuel received a letter from Denver. The return address simply read, "The Weatherby family." Inside, written in careful script, were 2 words, "Thank you." Enclosed was a photograph of a toddler with dark hair and bright eyes, sitting in a garden with a woman and man who looked at him like he was their greatest treasure. Sarah had signed the letter simply, "A friend." Samuel kept the photograph on his mantle, next to the scar where Marcus Garrett's bullet had chipped the stone. Sometimes when the wind was right and the evening light fell just so across his rebuilt cabin, he could swear he heard the sound of a child's laughter carried on the breeze. He never did learn what happened to the 30,000 in gold that Sarah supposedly stole, but every time he looked at that photograph, Samuel figured some treasures were worth more than their weight in precious metal. Some were worth exactly what you paid for them. A choice made in the darkness, when doing right mattered more than staying safe.